Hey, my sweet Kit Kats, Keli-Kat here. Let's do a cloche project for Christmas using the IOD Le Cloche mold. Of course, it's a favorite. I never tire of using it. I poured this resin in the fast cast from Paint Couture, which is available at my all paint products link in my link tree. And we're gonna just decoupage this scrap piece I had left over in my stash. I apologize, I am not 100% sure where it came from. I usually try to keep that portion of the scrap so that I can let you all know, but I must not have in this case. We're gonna give it a good dry. We're gonna sand off those edges with our gator sander after we have it good and dry so we don't tear those edges where we don't want them to be torn. Gives us a nice crispy edge there. And I'm just gonna go right back over and seal it with that same decoupage varnish and glue from Pentart in the Silky Shine. So cute. We're gonna come back here with this beautiful Abyss paint from Paint Couture. And I choose to use a smaller, more narrow brush so that I can get down into all those grannies much easier than using a fatter, wider bristled brush. Just taking my time there a little bit. I have a little extra brush piece there that I cut off with my scissors. And I'm trying to pull some of the colors from that rice paper, so kind of deep down in there is that darker blue. And then we're going to age it up just a bit as well. I did not prime this piece at all before I started, but you certainly could do that. This is a really good example of how my mind kind of thinks as I'm working through a project. I pulled this beautiful paint color thinking, oh, that's perfect, I'm gonna love it. And as I'm putting it on, I'm thinking it's kind of dark. It's a little bit darker than what I was looking for. So you'll kind of see the process of how I work with that to get it to be just a little bit more what I had in mind. Getting that very top portion of the cloche also. Going to give that a dry here. I did pull a delicate metallic in a silverish blue, I believe that is. I decided not to use that one, even though initially I was like, ooh, that's going to be perfect to kind of dry brush over it. So there you see me grabbing a sky blue from Paint Couture. I apologize, I did not flip my camera on this portion. Down in those little grannies, there is a bit more of that pretty soft blue color. So I'm just going in there very gently and adding a bit just to kind of help blend that rice paper a little bit there. I am liking that choice much better. Do the very same thing on the top. It's a much better match than what I had initially chose for paint. We're gonna dry that super great. Then I decide, ooh, let's use some antiquing gel from Pentart in white. So all you do is brush that on all over that area that we just painted. And then you can take either a damp baby wipe or a paper towel. We'll wipe some of that antiquing gel back just to kind of leave it down in all the details there. And that also calms down that dark blue color some. I like it much better. If you end up taking a little bit too much off, just put some back on. Repeat that process until you love it. It's getting there. Let's dry that. I'm thinking to myself, I want to pick up a bit of that red in the rice paper on Santa. So first I take that same sky blue and I just offload a good amount of my paint and kind of dry brush over those details. And here is where I pull, this sparkling gel from Pentart. It's a red gold color. And this is kind of the same thing. You can either paint it on and wipe it back. I'm just coming in here and hitting some of those high details. And it's adding a bit more dimension to all that texture. A little bit on the top also, so it all works together. We're going to dry that up. And I decide I want a little bit of gold wax paste on those details also. So that is a Pentart gold wax paste, one of my favorites, of course. I use a brush and I actually put some down the sides there of the cloche just to give it a nice little shadow effect of that gold. That is much, much better. And last minute, I decide, of course, to use a little fine line crackle here. So this is a really good example of kind of what can happen when your products might sit for a bit or you don't use them up quickly. I'm kind of at the bottom portion of my fine line crackle component 1 there. It's quite thick. So if that happens to you and you're not getting the crackle that you're hoping for, it just might be that your product is a bit old, and that can certainly affect the outcome when you're using it. We're going to go ahead and let that dry. In the meantime, I'm going to take this beautiful rice paper from AB Studios. It's number 1316. This was also in my stash. I went ahead and cut out a portion of it that I'll show you here in just a moment. I ended up not using it, but we are going to be able to easily patch that right back in. There's that piece. Using my Silky Shine again here, decoupage varnish and glue, sealing it nicely. And I tore those edges a bit initially on that little piece that I took out. So that feathered edge is going to blend in perfectly. You're never going to be the wiser that that's what happened to the paper. And the same thing here, we just want to give it a little dry before we sand off those edges. I actually lifted a portion of that small piece that I kind of patched in, so I'm fixing that right there. No worries at all. And of course, the extra that I have here, I will also put that back in my stash. You never know when you might need a piece. Sealing that as well. Making sure I have those edges down really good. I am loving that blue and that pattern. Here my piece is dry from component 1, so I'm coming in with a clean and dry brush to add component 2 of our fine line crackle. This is super glossy, so it's nice to be able to look at it in a light and see if you missed any areas. And that's exactly what I'm doing there. Just making sure I have the best coverage I can. You can start out drying that a bit, but the rest of it I let dry on its own. And we're going to paint the sides here and keep this super simple in another beautiful paint couture color called Admiral Blue. And this little shelf sitter is just a piece I picked up thrifting. I like the chunkiness of it, and all I did was Zinsser spray prime the whole thing to cover it up, give us a nice smooth, fresh work surface to make this into something else. I do end up putting a few coats on there. I thought about doing a stencil on the sides and honestly just thought it would be best to keep this one simple. I also love doing some Christmas items in colors that are maybe not your traditional red and greens. So I thought the blue in the rice paper with the Santa would be a good idea to kind of work around that. There's my second coat going on. It's a great match for that rice paper. I have had that rice paper for some time. It came from my link to TH Decor. It is an AB Studio paper, number 1316. I'm just going to start the drying process a bit there on that component number 2 of the fine line crackle. So component 2 is going to crackle component number 1. And you just want to make sure you're keeping your heat tool moving. Don't concentrate in one area at a time. Here is everything nice and dry. I actually went ahead and did just a bit of this pretty little heavy metallic brilliant white from Paint Couture all over the sides and the front of my rice paper for a little sparkle. And now I'm taking my favorite gold wax paste. Everything is dry on my cloche and pushing that color down into those fine line cracks, wiping back with a dry paper towel. Couple spots there I wanted just a bit more, and I will be sealing that in a clear solvent base varnish, which is required from PentArt. The solvent base portion is what you want to concentrate on if you're going to do fine line crackle. That is the required method to seal it, stop that crackle, and keep it protected. I decide to use my large Bodabra here. I'm just lying a piece of gold wire in there that comes with your Bodabra to be able to tie that off. I have some pretty little blue ribbon there. And then this is white that came from Tammy at Tammy Loves Vintage. I have a little gold sari silk there, kind of an antique gold. I decide I want a few pearls in there. That big roll can be purchased on Amazon. And then I have just a pretty little light blue, just kind of picking up the colors in the paper. An amazing little wooden bobbin there to wrap my lace around. If you have interest in that, my sister Rachel from Two Ladies and a Laser makes those in all sizes. And I'm just kind of fluffing my bow, getting my tails down and tying that off on the back side. Giving it a good knot, and then I'm going to cut off that excess there. Of course, just fussing with that a bit until I like it, making any changes, snipping any longer edges. And I decide to put a pretty little totally dazzled antique bronze snowflake right in the middle of our bow. You can see there the rest of them lying out. They have all sorts of beautiful colors, rose gold, silver. Using a little stick fast and just a touch of hot glue to get that down. Nice little messy bow. And I'm drying that varnish that I put over our cloche just a bit. I decide I want some totally dazzled rhinestones in there for a little bit of extra shine. So I have my pen picker tool there, a little B7000. That little green tray is where I poured my rhinestones. If you give it a shake, it helps to turn them up the right way. Using my little picker pen there, it has that awesome little tip on it. That wax tip picks up your rhinestones for you. And then you can just move that over to your project and put them where you like. You could also use stickles on here. I think that would be pretty too. Just a few, not going too crazy. Then we're going to go ahead and take our little shelf sitter there and some glossy, heavy body gel. I'm going to use my little palette tool to get a good layer of that on the back of my resin cloche. And we are going to adhere that down right on the front there. Line it up, give it just a little push. You can clean out any excess that might have squeezed out the sides at this moment. Otherwise, the glossy heavy body gel, does dry clear. I think that's a perfect match. And here it is all put together, added our bow. Everything is sealed. Just such a cute piece. Added a little bit of gold wax paste around the edges. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.